It seems like every movie critic this weekend went to the theaters to watch our favorite movie star travel around the world one last time and kick some serious ass. Well, I'm here to report that I watched not that movie. What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is Fountain of Youth. This is the Apple Plus movie that was released the same weekend as Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch. I Great programming strategy, guys. Uh, and it's catching all the attention from the homebound individuals. And so for you homebound individuals, don't worry. I got your back. We've got Fountain of Youth. It's a film that they spent a ton of money on. It has audio description, so let's talk about it. Please click like and subscribe because I never know what I'm going to review. And I like to review everything, and I don't just clout chase. So Fountain of Youth is the kind of film that we desperately keep wanting. We so badly want this genre to work. So badly. So badly. To the point where franchises like Tomb Raider and Uncharted are still alive and kicking in some form, where we're still trying to find. I think Tomb Raider's got like a TV series going. Uncharted has, I think we greenlit a sequel to that. We're still trying to keep this idea alive that we could have these sort of globe-trotting artifact adventures with, charming leads and exotic locations and plots that seemingly make sense but probably really don't if you're sitting next to a historian, somebody with a PhD in, I don't know, anything. And, well, this time they've paid money to get some movie stars along for the ride, like John Krasinski, Natalie Portman, Issa Gonzalez, Domhnall Gleeson, Stanley Tucci, and are we better for it? I don't know. It's directed by Guy Ritchie, and I want so much from Guy Ritchie. I want him to find himself again. I think that's one of the reasons why last year, even though I've seen it twice and I do like the movie, I've come to the terms with maybe the fact that I loved Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare a little too much more than I give it credit for, simply because it gave me a hint of old school Guy Ritchie, the kind of Ritchie that we all, well, let's face it, it's the reason he has a career. Like, he doesn't have a career because he's able to dip in and out of incredibly generic films with very little style or substance to them. Aladdin didn't make him. He he was made bread and butter on the back of films like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch and Rock and Roller, and he even used that style into major franchises like Sherlock Holmes, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which arguably didn't turn into a franchise, but it still feels very much like a typical Guy Ritchie movie. And now he starts directing things like The Covenant and Aladdin, and it just it's starting to lose his beat. He's starting to lose his way. This is, and I've checked, I got these statistics from the White House. It has been compared to The Mummy 9 billion times in the last 24 hours. Those you don't want to check that statistic with, I think AI helped with that, but basically everybody's like, this is like The Mummy. Do you know why they think that? Because we include the pyramids of Giza, so it's really easy to just immediately go, oh, The Mummy. But it kind of just broadly features into sort of a wide spectrum of films that have been chasing Indiana Jones for a long time. Uh, and we've all been doing that. Romancing the Stone does this. Romancing the Stone, sometimes they're romantic connections, sometimes they're buddy connections, which is why I brought up Uncharted, because Uncharted isn't really like a romantic pairing between our two leads. It sort of just has Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg set up to go on this adventure, not necessarily to fall in love. Tomb Raider, she's not really falling in love with anybody, especially in the remake. So it isn't always that. Sometimes it's an interesting dynamic that stands out otherwise between these characters. But yeah, there's a whole slew of these movies. Some of them have worked, some of them have not. Some of them start franchises. You know, we had 2 National Treasure movies. Arguably, that movie made enough money that we should have had a third. I don't know why we didn't. But you know, we had Da Vinci Code, which did really well at the box office. They tried Angels and Demons, which did okay. And then Inferno, which blew up at the box office. So we want to see people finding artifacts. This is something that we really want as a genre, whether they're doing it in grand fashion with $200-300 million. I have no idea how much money this movie costs, but they shot it on location, and this movie has VFX out the ass. So we might be looking at another Electric State here, where they easily spent $300 million on this movie. I'm all about spending money on auteurs when they have a project. You know, I think there are certain times when Apple, Amazon, Netflix's metrics, because they're so different, ultimately reward the kind of directors who can make a film. I think the best example is Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. He needed the money to be able to do all of the de-aging and everything to make this epic story, but it needed to put a price tag on it. It was never going to recoup at the box office. So in order for it to happen, he kind of needed streaming services to exist. Otherwise, The Irishman would have been made completely differently and probably wouldn't have had quite the same effect. I don't know that it would have quite landed the same way. So if you give the right person the money, they have the opportunity to turn something out. Arguably, I do think that that's what happened with Havoc. I know people are debating about whether or not that is. I think basically you handed the director of The Raid and The Raid Redemption money, and he went and made a film that was like The Raid and The Raid Redemption. He stayed on brand. He didn't veer off. Guy Ritchie was handed money to make Fountain of Youth, which I'm sure is probably adapted from a novel, and he kind of just did his usual thing where he throws away his new thing where he throws away any style and substance and just basically makes a film that Brett Ratner could have made. There's nothing really specific about this film that stands out in any way. The characters are just kind of whatever the film needs them to be at any given moment. Issa Gonzalez is probably the biggest standout because she plays, the film has given her this role where she's like a villain, but not a villain. She's a villain who's also sort of John Krasinski's love interest. So she wants to kill him, but also make out with him at the same time, which is, that kind of push and pull is kind of interesting. Otherwise, it's a story about a brother who's, guess what, trying to find the Fountain of Youth. And sort of following their dad's footsteps. Their dad was played by Stanley Tucci, and he was seeking truth. and now Krasinski is following in his footsteps and ends up sort of bringing his sister along for the ride, even though she's the more serious person. There's a little kid in this too, by the way. So that's why another reason. See, I was drawn immediately to The Mummy before we ever went to Egypt, because they started bringing a kid around. I was like, when was the last time I saw a little kid in... Oh, The Mummy Returns. So yeah, Portman's got a kid that follows them around. So that's, I guess, one of the unique things about the film, sort of. and they they go and they have these big set pieces, and they actually did shoot on location, which I'm sure looks great. There's this big sequence where they raise the Lusitania. I know it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I'm thinking to myself, how much money did this scene cost? Does the VFX look good? Because I'm just getting the audio description, and it kind of feels like a big moment when you're raising the Lusitania from the depths of the ocean. So you can, I don't know, continue your archaeological journey. Um, Krasinski is, I don't know, wasted here. I'm sorry, he is. I love Krasinski, but he isn't picking the best works. Arguably, last year he was in his own movie, and he shouldn't have been. He was one of my least favorite things about If, a movie that was okay. I liked it, but I didn't really think John Krasinski worked for me. But it's hard when you're the director of your own movie to be able to, I think, analyze your own performance in sort of a neutral way. Like, how do you give yourself feedback? So it's always sort of a gamble. Sometimes we get great performances, sometimes we just get really indulgent performances. I think with Krasinski here, he's doing a role that was written for Chris Pratt. This feels like Chris Pratt. It has no dramatic weight to it until maybe the very end, which reminds me a little bit of like the couple of times that like Star-Lord has ever had to like have a serious thought, or Owen Grady, a couple of times when life has maybe been sort of on the line and he has to actually stop and not be so affably, jokingly adorable or cute or whatever his aim is, and the Chris Prattisms, that I know they annoy the shit out of some people, but basically that's what John Krasinski's doing here. Is he's, for some reason, pervasively the comic like character of his own movie, which you don't usually see. Which is another reason why you could compare it to sort of Brendan Fraser's performance in The Mummy, because he had sort of that same sort of like humor to it, but I think Krasinski's still going a little bit further. He doesn't have quite the seriousness behind his tone to be able to pursue the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure, or what Harrison Ford pulls off in every Indiana Jones movie, where it's just sort of like a sarcastic nod. Now he feels almost like he shouldn't be here. And Portman comes in, and she should be the serious character, but she kind of gives that up. And then she kind of just wants to, it's like she plays one of those characters that's like, I can be fun. How dare you not call me fun? But I'm going to also complain the whole way. But I'm also going to find ways of being fun. I'm the more serious and sensible character here, but we're going to get through this. So it's just, they don't really feel like brother and sister. They don't really ever feel like, actually, that they knew each other before the movie. They have really zero chemistry in this film. The supporting cast, I don't know, Domhnall Gleeson. We've got Laz Alonso here. I'm sure I'm forgetting people. Stanley Tucci's really underutilized. So really, Issa Gonzalez is the standout. I enjoyed Issa's performance legitimately, which I can say I've done that before. I have. Issa has stood out for me in films where there hasn't been a standout performance. I thought she was excellent in like Ambulance. Forgot that movie. She was such a standout in a movie I've already forgotten. Yeah, I thought she was good in Ambulance. I thought she was good in Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I thought in a cast full of dudes, and she's got the one female role, she stood out not just for being the only female, but because she was actually the best part of the film. So unfortunately, her movie Ash is awful. Just abysmal. It just, oh my God. But so I think maybe she comes out on top here, but this is just sort of accessible popcorn entertainment. Some people will like it. Critics probably won't. I didn't really love it. I thought it was fine. Luckily, it doesn't overstay its welcome. This film isn't like 2.5, 3 hours long. My God, it kind of moves through its set pieces, but it also, because it moves pretty quickly, it doesn't really ever have too much time to sort of relish in any of the archaeological MacGuffins that we keep trying to find. There was something that I was interested in where they find the Wicked Bible, and has nothing to do with no, none of that. It's it is sort of interesting in terms of its text, but I kind of wanted more explanation of it. I kind of wanted them to talk more about like, ooh, what is this? I felt like when you hear something called like the Wicked Bible, you're really like, oh, well, this has to have more, there has to be some sort of substance or ramifications or something behind this. And then, nah, it's just one more piece of the puzzle. Whether they're searching down one of the greatest art pieces in history, or trying to find a key or whatever it is, everything is just an incidental piece that leads to the titular fountain of youth. And then what do they do when they get there? Question mark. Is it everything that is promised? Or is there perhaps, a catch-22 in this scenario? Audio description on this was okay. I was able to follow it pretty well. There's a supporting cast, so you gotta kind of stay up on it because it feels, I think actually comparing it a little bit to Mission Impossible isn't a bad comparison, because Ethan does always have like a team of people around him. So checking in on them and what they're up to is absolutely valid, because that's what John Krasinski ends up having, especially once he gains his sister. So it's about following these people as they are supporting what it is that he's doing. The score in this movie is nothing memorable. I'm sorry, it's just not. Guy Ritchie reuses a lot of the same sort of like classical music pieces that have been used in every single movie ever. So the movie doesn't really have its own identity. It doesn't really feel like it has its own pulse. The Ministry of Ungentlely Warfare had that sort of Mac the Knife, that like sort of redone version that Issa sang. I think it was Mac the Knife. That kind of felt different. That kind of felt fresh. Here, it just kind of feels like we're going through a checklist of greatest hits that we've slapped onto this movie. It's kind of disappointing. So I really don't have anything here for Fountain of Youth. I also don't aggressively hate it. I'm just sort of unimpressed by it, which is not a great feeling. I feel about the same with this movie as I did with The Electric State, which I liked more than, that was a movie that people were just, dive bombing on. And I didn't hate that movie either. It was a little longer than it needed to be, but it had some fun parts to it. This movie has some fun parts to it. It has some cool scenes. Lifting the Lusitania is inherently just like a cool sequence, and as long as it was done right, I'm sure for visual audiences it looked really cool. For us, it's just lifting the Lusitania, and I'm more concerned about the plot and the reasons why we're doing it, and like what are the characters, what are we, I'm thinking about plot, character structure, story, those kind of things. So there isn't much to say about Fountain of Youth necessarily, like a should you go see it? Well, if you're at home, you don't have to go anywhere. If you just have Apple Plus, you're paying for it anyway. You might as well. What's stopping you? If you don't have Apple Plus, I can't imagine a good reason to tell you to sign up for it to watch Fountain of Youth. It doesn't feel like a Guy Ritchie movie. John Krasinski arguably doesn't even feel like John Krasinski in this movie. I guess maybe he feels a little bit like Jim from The Office in sort of that like goofy way of, I don't really belong here. If you were to put Jim the Office in Jim Halpert in like a swashbuckling adventure, he would feel really out of place. But Krasinski has sort of branched out from that as an actor. He has turned in some really great performances in movies like A Quiet Place and TV shows like Jack Ryan. He's shown that he's far more capable of range that is just not utilized here. He has no range here, which is why I said he was like Chris Pratt, who I do enjoy Chris Pratt, but Chris Pratt basically just does Chris Pratt in every movie. This feels like it was written for Chris Pratt, and he turned it down. He was like, this is even a little bit too much of me. Uh, it's a little too on the nose. So, Natalie Portman, I really don't know why she's here. There's nothing, I don't know, it's a paycheck probably. I wish I could say something good about this, because I know this is a franchise potential. There's a series probably here of books. I'm sure I didn't do the research because I just don't care. But I don't think we're gonna make more of these, and even if there are, I just don't see that happening. So I'm gonna give Fountain of Youth a C. It was just very, very average, but considering the talent of everyone involved, it shouldn't have been. This should have been at least as good as some of the other films that I've listed that I liked more. Honestly, I liked Uncharted more. I liked the last Tomb Raider movie more. Both National Treasure films. At least two of the Mummies. Like all of the Indiana Jones movies. Actually, even I'd rather watch Dial of Destiny again. Yeah. So, yeah, this just didn't really do anything for me. Sorry. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.